Hi, hi, hi. That's surreal and cool. Hi, welcome to Asian Arts Initiative. How many of you here for the first time? Oh, cool. Awesome. Welcome. We are but stewards, shepherds, sort of keepers of space for the time being. We're obviously on Lenni Lenape land, so I want to first make that acknowledgement. Also wanted to say that in our endeavor to do better by acknowledging land, we have so much space here. I'm so excited to announce that in the next, well, hopefully indefinitely, as long as we're here, we'll be providing free space, studio space for any indigenous cultural laborers, creative laborers, and that's an initiative we are working alongside with We Are the Seeds in this inaugurating year of this project. You can meet them and Thailand, specifically their director, tomorrow at our community fair. So that's my little slip in of foreshadowing of some programming coming up here. So if you aren't too tired tonight after partying with Cynthia at Airea, please come back to our building tomorrow, 12 to 4. That's the community fair. We'll be culminating with a keynote speech by Angela Garbez on radical mothering and essential labor. So, okay, phones on vibrate, off, etc. Thank you for staying masked. Thank you for coming vaxxed. And the precautions are mostly so that you can see the speakers' lovely mouths and faces as they speak and recite poetry. I'm so excited to introduce people, really, that require no introduction, but you know, I'm gonna introduce them anyway. So I'm going to start with our main guest and then introduce a couple other folks that have come here, and then I'm going to let them do the rest of the talking. I'm reading, so it looks like I don't know them, but I do. All right. Cynthia Dewi Oka is the author of Fire is Not a Country, which has just come out. You can get your copies at the front. And Salvage from Northwestern University Press, and Nomad of Salt and Hard Water from Thread Makes Blanket Press. A recipient of the Tupelo Quarterly Poetry Prize and the Leeway Transformation Award, her writing has appeared in The Atlantic, Poetry, Academy of American Poets, The Rumpus, Pank, Guernica, ESPNW, and elsewhere, sorry sis. In collaboration with Philadelphia Contemporary Friends of the Rail Park and Asian Arts Initiative, her experimental poem, Future Revisions, is so amazing. And then to like listen to it recited to music was so cool. Was exhibited at the billboard right there on 12th and Kettle Hill in August of this year. She has taught creative writing at Bryn Mawr College and is a 2021 to 22 poet in residence at the Amy Clampett House in Lenox, Massachusetts. I don't know why I wanted to say Missouri for some reason. Massachusetts. She's originally from Bali, Indonesia. Airea D. Matthews' first collection of poems is the critically acclaimed Simulacra, which received the prestigious 2016 Yale Series Younger Poets Award. The collection explores the topics of longing and desire with power, insight, and intense emotion. Matthews received a 2020 Pew Fellowship. That's huge. A 2016 Rona Jaffe Foundation Writers Award, and was awarded the Louis Untermeyer Scholarship in Poetry from the 2016 Bread Loaf Writers Conference. Matthews earned her MFA from the Helen Zell Writers Program at the University of Michigan. She is an assistant professor at Bryn Mawr College, where she directs the poetry program. And Kirwyn Sutherland is a clinical research professional and poet who makes poems centering the Black experience in America. He is a Watering Hole Fellow and has attended workshops, residencies at Cave Canem, Winter Tangerine, Poets House, Philadelphia Sculpture Gym, and Pearlstein Art Gallery at Drexel University. Kirwyn's work has been published in American Poetry Review, Cosmonauts Avenue, Blue Shift Journal, Apiary Magazine, Folder, The Wanderer, and elsewhere. Kirwyn has served as editor of lists, book reviewer for What's Good magazine, and poetry editor for Apiary magazine. Love Apiary. I just bought like 8 issues. They're really beautiful. You should go support, right? Yeah. Kirwyn has you should support everything. Okay. Kirwyn has a chapbook, Jump Ship on Thread Makes Blanket Press. So I welcome you to join me in putting our hands together. And now Kirwyn.
I'm horrible with microphones, so I'm gonna try to. Let me see. All right. Oh, there you go. No. Okay. Hey, everybody. So yeah, I was trying to scour the internet to see when I met Cynthia. I couldn't remember. So where do? You go to Facebook where everything is documented. And so I went to Facebook and I found a couple of comments that I wanted to read. Yeah, I did. So of course it was like you found like happy birthdays and like different things like that. But so I have them dated and then I'll read the comment. All right. October 13, 2017. I want to reiterate how beautiful the reading was yesterday at Pearl Scene Art Gallery, and also want to reiterate Cynthia's aim to spark conversation, discussion, and understanding across communities of color. April 23rd, 2017, Cynthia encapsulated what was so wrong about the poems at Redacted Festival. Now, if you want to know, you can ask me and I'll tell you. I got the whole comment section. All right. And October 26, 2017, I had a conversation with Cynthia where this was eliminated. One big takeaway, the crude and short version, follow your voice and fuck everything else. So yeah, those are the comments, right? So then I have like a more formal comment that I wanted to read. The first poet I read avidly was Yusef Kamanyaka. Very early in my poetry career, I knew there were elements of Kamanyaka's poem that blew right past me. The parts that did stick almost always had to do with metaphor, allusion, and juxtaposition. Kamanyaka would put the most seemingly discordant ideas next to each other to produce a vivid image or a persuasive argument or even a challenge to the psyche. I find the same daring in Cynthia's poems. From Fire is Not a Country, I immediately thought of 21 Lessons in the Art of Embouchure. Each numbered line is a riff on definition or a question or a plea coming from under the theme, straight or crooked, fast or slow. Unpredictable, not just from line to line, but from word to word. 2, the mother is a king, lonely and gray, whose crown of matches is alive. 10, a billion hind legs rubbing. This is how God is composed. 17, was I clear enough, loud enough, unmistakable, sweet enough? Reading neon vernacular, I used to think there are whole other poems in these lines that are just for me. Was I clear enough, loud enough, unmistakable, sweet enough? Same here. They activate the imagination, give legs to the inane, charges the quixotic and anxious task of working through poems with giddiness. Being able to be in community with such a poet who constantly brings new and fresh approaches to the presentation and execution of poems has been challenging in the best way possible. So yes, that's my comments. And thank you, Cynthia, for being in community with you, for challenging us every time. Every time I see you, it's like, oh, it's like a new work she's starting, like a whole new, like a whole new thing. Like it's crazy. So yeah, and then I'm gonna read a poem, and it's a poem I wrote a while ago about Chew and Shelton, which is a street I grew up on, and I felt like this was the one to read here. So it's called Every Stairway Leads to God. 7, remember, only 2 washers working out of 14 pairs. The weight, baby powder and pajamas and Saturday mornings, about 10 of us. Scant for a weekend, but the wait. The eyes have time, take time, looking through broken machines. Inside, a grouping of small plastic bags. Everybody ain't wake up today to do chores. It would explain the line outside, congregation at the threshold with empty hands, leaving an ounce heavier. Maybe a chore or two. Dragging a duffel bag 3 city blocks is work to me, but I unload it easy. Lost forever if I wanted. It's not need or fiend or hunger managing a pool of gravity. Nothing matters but the distance between substance and soothe, the high and the after, the history of how high came to regulate sorrow. How could I go backwards again? Addiction. What else can snatch heaven out of life's jaws? 6. We shake our heads too at shine. Stone-washed jeans, pomade slicked back, Vaseline heavy, crystals at the eye, lips, corners. It makes us regular people uncomfortable to see what happens in the other country. There, night ain't catch us just yet, or we know how to roll cloth gently over the funk. 5. She asked me if I was trying to sell twice, offhand, tossed it and posted on the corner. If I knew different, I would have found her later, asked about type, quantity, speed. She saw my needs, small gaps separating my body from the block calling. Nothing at home but bread and whatever cheap spread I was taught you poor until a boat comes, and then poverty can't claim you again unless you love it. 4. There is a police van in front. A block later, a police car parked. Around the corner, another, tracing the same radius for 15 minutes. Nothing outside but plants. Over the static, a twisted weed tells a cop if he waits long enough, a prison will fill his eyes with gold. When I pass, quiet, hoodie, light spring from an eye, shuts. I want the SEPTA driver to reverse and provide that big bus sound, a diversion enough for my legs to creep into still life. 3. SEPTA never comes on time. The weight always more than just holding space. Slacks collect dirt on edges, sweat condenses collards, belt buckle pressing far, cuts against breathing free. If it were up to me, I would burn the profession off and sit on the curb, splayed in a rude posture, sin's dirtiest words, failure, surrender, nigger. I'm tired of pretending to smile, posing my lips to not fall back. If I didn't become too good to live where I lived, how might I react to the sun staring me in my grill? Better? Could my brain quiet my skin? 2. Through the glass, around the bars, over the chain fence, around the bars, through the grass, a black top, and us looking at each other, mirror moving through reflection and laughing, hordes of giddy, swinging, dunking, hopscotching, dice dancing, yelling, chomping, cussing, falling, bleeding, rising, flying. Family means I got your black. I can hold the space of your wound and trust mine don't need to hide. 1. A pigeon escaped inside a circle, flapped around the kitchen and all the wood went blank. Wings petrified our tiny heads. We begged Daddy to get it out. He did. Not in time. Mommy saw. She said it meant death. I saw his shadow crawl from beneath the stove, flat at first, grasping. This sounds crazy, but death is conjurable. He ate her one superstition at a time, till she was just a light convo between me and my uncle in the middle of the night in my grandma's bedroom. It was raining, faces, whole family streaming. I knew before they created the word funeral, it made me an author. Thank you. So give it up for Airea and Cynthia, who are about to rock your world with some combo. So yeah.
sing? Is that good? Mine is on. Oh.
I don't think mine is on. I'm happy to use that. Can you hear me now? So I was saying we get the honor of hearing Cynthia read from Fire is Not a Country in a few short minutes. But what I wanted to have the opportunity to do is to get inside of her brilliant mind before we hear her read from the work. Cynthia and I have a fire text archive. Like, we talk about everything from the most mundane, disgusting things to philosophy to politics. And so it seemed like the right opportunity just to sit here and pick your brain in public so that everyone can have the opportunity to hear you talk, but to do it under the guise of talking about the book. Does that make sense?
I like it. It's like our text thread.
It's like our
but
text
in
thread,
human form.
but in human form.
Yes.
So of the many things you can't help but notice in Fire is Not a Country is an invitation to an experience. Mm. And it's an experience of otherness and an experience with boundary. Mm. So it resonates almost as a tome or a book of becoming, both one of many and one of the other. Hmm. Once you become aware of the self, you can't unknow that others exist or that you might be one of those others. Hmm. And that's what I took away. One of the many things I took away from the book was this invitation to consider the other exists and I am one of the other. When you began to confront the very real ways that borders and migratory patterns codify identity, codify the way that we identify ourselves, how did you hold to the truth while still preserving your lineage? How do you hold to the truth that I am an other in others' eyes, but I am a many in some others' eyes?
That's very typical of Airea. You know, I was actually thinking the other day, you know how like artists, we have to write these statements of intent sometimes, and artist statements. You actually had a great suggestion on Twitter the other day where it's just like, I just make stuff and figure it out later, which is the truth. But I was thinking that, you know, probably like the most honest opening that I would say to a statement that has yet to be written is that when we migrated, my life ended. And that is my experience of otherness, which I don't think is only my experience of otherness. I think that is what we experience as others, is the expectation that certain parts of our lives die. Certain parts of us do not get to continue when we enter the academic institution, when we enter the mall, when we enter the ballot box, when we enter into the square, the idea of the people, even sometimes, is that. So I think to me, what it means to become one and the many is actually an acceptance of those fractures. There is a kind of there's like a narrative and a desire for singularity and wholeness that I feel very much tempted by. I very much want to be able to want that, right? Yeah. In sort of like American discourse. You want to be the individual, and you want to be a part of the republic as an individual. And I think that that is something that I have found very difficult, because I don't know who else here is a Game of Thrones fan, but what is dead may also never dies. Like, that's the saying from the people on the Iron Islands, right? It's like what is dead also actually continues in a really and often more powerful way. We often experience those deaths more powerfully. They're often more enlivening than the lives that we have to live, where the versions of ourselves that are allowed to be, that are permitted to be in particular spaces, have to be so truncated, have to be so reduced to labels that are legible and understandable to like people who don't care about our lives. So I think, to me, a big part of this book was embracing those fractures, embracing that wholeness may not be possible, and that those fractures are worth living, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And it made me kind of think of the resistance or the tension between the idea of fracture and how you write. Just by virtue of how you write with a certain fullness. So when we had the launch, the Northwestern launch, Airea comment to you was that your talked about your attention to detail. You have such an attention in your poem that you hold on, seemingly through memory, you hold on to each and every detail of the moment, of the scene. And by the first poem, a reader becomes transfixed by the speaker's gaze. So you can see what the speaker is doing and what the speaker is seeing just through your attention to scene, your attention to the moment. And so I was wondering, how did your upbringing, in fact, impact your relationship to narratological detail? So how did the way that you came up, was there a certain attention to detail? How do you remember these things with such fidelity?
I've never been asked this question. I really like this question. In my family, memory is not important. In my family, not remembering is the thing that you have to be good at. And that is also the truth in Indonesia, in a country that continues to function in many respects by forced amnesia enacted on the people. Like, we are not allowed to remember entire chunks of our history. It is not taught. It is not allowed to be spoken about. And that mentality, that training, filters down to families.
Sure.
When we migrated, we were not allowed. There was no space to talk about. We never once said we missed home. Not one time. We never talked about the childhood friends we grew up with, the family members that we missed. Because it was like, if you remember, you will feel. And if you feel, you will not be able to continue. Because we do not have the skills to hold these feelings and to live our lives holding these feelings. So I think I learned to hold on to details because, one, there were no stories that I felt like allowed to hold on to that was mine. And second, it's related to what I was saying earlier around fractures. So when I think about those fractures, I don't think of them as like, I think of them as like ledges in this giant wall. You know how like when ice breaks away and it leaves a fracture? So like fractures are edges that we hold on to. And I think that's what the detail is for me. I hang on to detail for dear life because that's all there is. I think we have this also, don't lose sight of the forest for the trees. I think all we have are the trees. And I think that's all we have, and that's how we make our way from day to day, minute to minute, word to word, sound to sound, is actually how we live. So I think that is where my attention wants to hold on to, is actually because I feel like the big stories, the meta stories that exist, I feel like they either don't have a place for me or they're lying to me. And the census, the census, that is what I can trust. And trusting my senses brought the best people into my life, brought poetry into my life. So, end.
That's a beautiful answer, actually, really beautiful. I hope, is this being taped? Because we need to be able to go back to that to see that once and again. This idea of resistance as resisting forgetting, resisting erasure through memory, fidelity to a moment. I have a question about relationship too, as I'm thinking about resistance. We had a conversation where we talk about our fragmented selves, how we are this, and mother, and this, and wife, and this, and I'm supposing that you really can't confront who you are as an entity, as the self, who the self is, except in relation to others to some degree. Or at least that's a very Western version of how identity works. And in Fire is Not a Country, relationships enter the text. It's either through who you are in that relationship or how the relationship has somehow impacted you. And I was wondering, when you started to question your environment, when you started to question your experiences, even your roots, were you afraid of what you were going to find?
Yeah. Yes, I think very, very much, because I think here's the thing. I love that your questions actually, they're in conversation with each other. The beautiful thing about memory is that it is, I think, the foundation of the truth that is true for us. It is embodied truth. And memory does not pretend, I think, to have an authority on, it is not the truth, right? It's circumscribed by this. This is this is the country where it applies. And I think that details are a way of fleshing that out. And I think that it has also, those tools and writing as a vehicle, writing as a technology for externalizing those details, for externalizing those experiences, those memories, and being able to look at them and being able to weigh them against what we are told, against what we are told to believe, against what we are told is the right way to be in the world, against what we are told, this is what this relationship is. I think that friction is it's that friction is where I think my art lives. I think it's where art lives, in the disagreement between our experience and the containers that we find ourselves in. And so often those relationships are the containers, right? And I think it's scary for me, it was scary for me to go in and unearth and decode the details that tell me actually a relationship was violent to you. And that actually a relationship was not it did not have your best interest at heart. Actually, a relationship failed, even when it pretended to succeed. And I think that's the scary things to find, because then you have to integrate what that means. That changes what your life means. That changes what your choices are. If I remember my parents' XY, like if this is how, I'm like, this is my narrative of them, and then these are the details that like actually stand in friction. Like, how do I reconcile the two? How do I like hold compassion and not deny myself compassion in the process? Because I think that we, especially for daughters, I think this happens a lot. We are supposed to hold particular, responsibilities for honor, for honoring our families, for not, for always giving it the highest place and the highest, respect in our lives. And sometimes, like, those spaces were the most violent to us. And how do we rest ourselves and, like, who we can be? Because I think that's what I really came to. I'm just like, who am I gonna be if I don't reconcile what my body knows to be true versus what I have been told is the truth? And like, I wanted to interrupt that in my relationship with my son. I wanted to be able to say to him, I'm like, these are all of the ways in which these are the ways in which I am made. And these are the weak places in me. And these are the places that might fail you. And that's your inheritance too. And it is a way for me to say, I am sorry, but also it is a way to interrupt passing it on, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like pointing out the areas of vulnerability and saying, this is my soft spot. Just be aware of it.
Just be aware of it.
And I'm wondering, it's a cultivation of vulnerability. And so for folks who struggle with that, I know you've struggled with that. I know I've struggled with that. How do you get to the point where you can allow yourself to be vulnerable? What has to happen where you can allow yourself to be vulnerable as a writer? Not only as a human, but as a writer specifically, where you know you're laying your life bare to some degree. Not every book is a memoir, but you know you're laying your life bare for the white light scrutiny of others, How do you do that? How do you be vulnerable?
Friends. I'm like not kidding, actually. I think it's friends. Because I don't think that it is fair to ask people to be vulnerable in a world that has weaponized our vulnerabilities against us. It is not fair to ask people to be vulnerable when what it means is that you get used, exploited, thrown away, discarded, erased, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it makes no freaking sense. And it is the thing that gets like rewarded in the industry. It's like all the, look how traumatized I am.
Exactly.
And I actually often think that, there's a way to perform vulnerability without actually being vulnerable.
Right.
So I think learning to discern between the two was really important to me, and it was because of people like you and having people like Kirwyn in my life, Andrea, who's taking photos right now in my life. And it takes time. It takes time to cultivate these relationships where it takes taking risks. It takes also figuring out how to be there for other people's vulnerabilities when we haven't necessarily been trained on how to do that. Like, how am I doing it holding your vulnerability? You know what I'm saying?
Great.
So,
very good.
So I think that would be my answer, is friends. Also Nico. Nico is amazing as well in terms of that. So I think, I think having good friends who we feel safe with, who we feel reflected by, and who will challenge us when we are not, when we're being unfair to ourselves. I think that's how.
One last question. Will you be vulnerable with us right now and read your work? We want to hear it.
Yes. Thank you, love. Actually, we're going to start tonight a little bit different, and I'm going to turn it to Yosuke for the first poem.
Discernment. Because we were unwanted, we tied the children to the elephants of our hearts, sent them small, swaying to the country of wanting, as though you didn't need convincing, trickery even, to open the gates one day. The girls' faces, the next, nothing. A long white field like the rabid dog's tongue, on which neon-wreathed windows fell like crumbs. I express pity by putting a hand lightly on the throat. You increase pressure when I open to the sun's brutal podium. Out spill shame, rice from a cut. Dreaming when our girl was little, she ate chrysanthemum peppered earth, not thinking about women and men, gold buried alive in chrysanthemum scented earth. The ragged pines. She tells herself fire is her parent, is evacuation of context, thick skin. I, mob of circumstance, oeuvre of plastic bags, God size, headlights through blue-tipped fingers, the oncoming train.
So my son, Paul, made that. And he's performing for a musical tonight, so he can't be here. But I'm so happy that his work can be here. The year of the shoe. A child, perhaps one of many, sat, arms folded at a desk painted the color of seafoam, also one of many. The wood had not been sanded. Often it splintered the sides of her hands as she lashed slippery knots of alphabet around the pack of dogs leaping from her throat. Afternoon fell in slats upon her so that she was at once brown and yellow, light crowded with the honking of cars, flies, and their notions of sovereignty, falling sanely on the police who directed traffic to and from the school, notorious for their sticks and the pigs they shared their living rooms with. I say perhaps because it could be anyone in that country during that time who had a secret or was a secret, in that there were many whose kidneys had not been spilled in the fields, nor were found blue entangled among roots of the mangrove, nor like thunderheads vanished once the ditches were flooded, the streets waist deep in shit. Nothing was less remarkable than that child, her waiting a pinky bone among the rows of waiting for an afternoon sticky with papaya juice and tumbling into the leaves like kites, her obedience no more than the other obediences, which combined rendered a room of 60 first graders quieter than grass waiting for the spade. Quiet was the price of a nation to call our own. Everyone knew this, and so she did not hear the bullets' laughter in the spines of East Timorese girls. Boys clapped to dust in the red hands of the Santa Cruz Cemetery. No, the child's memory of that year was of the rock she felt in her shoe minutes before dismissal, how she tried to ignore it, how it bit back with its single tooth, so that at last, without full consideration of the consequence, she slipped out her foot and reached down to turn the shoe over. A small click where rock hit the floor, and looking up she met the gaze of her teacher like lava hardening, or the night that stumbled in like a drunk through the door of the shack where she had once visited with mother to see that a teacher lived much like the police, with pigs not for eating, but for breeding and selling to keep the lamps lit. But a teacher's words were second only to father's, so that day she licked the tips of the sentence like goat meat. Stand on the bat foot in front of the classroom for 1 hour. The child watched her friends peel away like husks and hair from a cob of corn until the rows were fat with their absence, guiltily trembling under her weight. She would hear none of the hard whispers between teacher and father, who soon enough would take her home and lay her face down on the sheet with the faded pink and purple flowers, to paint pink and purple flowers of his own on the backs of her thighs with the zinging of his belt. For this was what it took to survive, a secret among secrets, while whole islands burned and the sea watched, remembering nothing, filling shoe after shoe, piling on its floor like toothless mouths with its own quiet and ambition, that it should be the first and the last, the only year there ever was. So I am really, really grateful to be here. Thank you so much to AAI, to Kirwyn, to Airea. I love you all so much. I wanted to offer like a new experience of poetry readings, because, I mean, this is probably gonna be the world now and time, with COVID. And so one of the things that is in this book is like these interludes, and they are little screenplays. And because we got so good with Zoom, I got to be able to have my friends actually enact some of these screenplays for us. So we're gonna see 2 of them tonight, and we're gonna do the first one now. This one is Ode on Her Last Day of Work.
Hi, everyone. We are going to be doing one of the interludes from my book, Fire is Not a Country. And this one is called Ode on Her Last Day of Work, which I co-wrote with my mother. So all of the dialogue is written in her English. And I'm really excited to have my friends here. Thank you so much, y'all, for doing this with me, because my dream is that you all will also play with your friends when you have the book. So my name is Cynthia, and I will be playing Fur Coat Auntie today.
Hi, I'm Hari. I am having a blast with folks doing this right now and so grateful to be part of this process. I am on unceded Coast Salish territories and I'm the author of The Flayed City, and I will be playing the narrator and the voice in the sky.
Hi, I'm Alexandra. I am a writer and filmmaker in Lenape Land, or New York City. I recently wrote and directed a short that Cynthia starred in, and I am also one half of the Sugar Nutmeg podcast, which I co-created, co-produced, and co-host with Ruth here today. And I will be playing the fake eyelashes auntie.
Hi, I'm Ruth. I'm the other half of Sugar Nutmeg, and I'm currently in Indonesia, and I'll be playing Hero Anchi.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm an architect, poet, and traditional Indonesian dancer. I was part of the Sanctuary Poetry Workshop that Cynthia led at the Asian Arts Initiative here in Philadelphia. And I'm also a fellow with the Chronicling Resistance Project at the Free Library. And today I will be playing Hot Pink Lips Auntie.
On Her Last Day of Work by Cynthia Dewi Oka, co-written with Lanny Lean. Exterior, high-rise apartment balcony, day. 4 aunties, feasting on leftover dim sum, lounge on rainbow-striped lawn chairs while sirens rip the net of a fuming city.
What do you see?
She holds up her phone for the others. On her WhatsApp screen, a 5th auntie waves, framed by the iron legs of the Eiffel Tower.
No shame.
Yeah, Europe is boring. For me, I want to go to pyramid.
We just buried her husband. Now she don't want to stay with her kids or her grandkids when, you know.
Gosh, we also didn't stay with our kids. No more Wi-Fi. Do you want another beer?
Angry shouts of the bleating of cars with nowhere to go mushroom from the street below. Smoke like an enormous gray horse gallops across the crimson-crowned hills. The aunties clink their glasses.
It's not our fault. If we go out right now, they will rob us. Or maybe more worse than that.
But maybe we will meet young, handsome guy who is alone. Look, I put my nails on. I get my Brazil waxed.
Don't call your thing that. It's not the meaning, you know.
Calm down, calm down. We all ASL here.
Hey, Brazil is also a type of peanut that is smooth inside like butter. So what I say is not wrong.
The thump, thump, thump of helicopter blades swallows the sky. Nearby, crowbars break into bones like windows. Remain calm. If you are not currently in a government-approved shelter, return to your homes and remain inside.
My husband paid no attention, you know, at least for the time being. I don't have to hear he crying like baby when he sleep.
At least he still go home. My husband is stuck to the casino.
We just working and working all the time. At home is the same as in the factory. The man is only crying and drinking because they have nothing to do. They think too much. Is life good or bad? It's waste time. Good or bad, we don't have a choice.
Did you remember what she said before she take the plane to Paris?
Remain calm. Looters will be shot on sight.
She's seeing her face in the movie posters.
Gunfire. Screams like cymbals. Helicopters nosedive toward the city's gridlock of metal and skin. Its glass intestines shatter.
Wow, I'm so sad we never watching Mamma Mia.
To start over in the new country is not for everybody. She must become someone important.
The city is sepia as a ruined film roll. A cell phone beeps.
Hey, Wi-Fi is back. My kids send WhatsApp. They arrive in the shelter.
More beeps. Their phone-lit faces flicker like the tips of matchsticks. Massive rocks are punching through the atmosphere. Remain. You not Kurt.
Forget it. Let's sing. She always picked the same song for karaoke, right?
I don't like that song at all.
Liar. You know all the lyrics. Siri. 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 Play Spice Girls. Wanna Be.
See, friends. Friends are awesome. All right. So, Kirwyn, I'm actually going to read this one for you. 21 Lessons in the Art of Embouchure. There are right and wrong ways to put your mouth around the void in the metal. The mother is a hidden compound. The mother is a king, lonely and gray, whose crown of matches is alive. Prepare for Harrow and Beauty, their digressions. A coastline littered by boats and the dark dirt of desire is battered by the notion of universality. Blue and green, like a seam of locusts, intent that no grain of sand should escape what they cannot eat. Of its own realm, where the disc is chipped, it skips, repeating the same, please. Like a history of brokenness. Holding her own hand, the king hurries past the sea. A billion hind legs rubbing. This is how God is composed. Past the white arches of Wales toward the garden sanity where someone is coming. Someone is coming is the hook of the song. I believed it with the strength of insects, the strength of kings. The boy abandoned to sunflowers makes his horn by mutilating his bowl. They are not so different from each other. Beauty and Harrow, king and sunflower. The universal is hard of hearing. The mouth is a void, a compound of God that makes promises such as, I am coming, while the mother's belly dome, metallic, shines with questions. Was I clear enough, loud enough, unmistakable, sweet enough? The boy's blue lips are a digression. They bleed now around the hole music makes. Even light is suspended like a hooked fish in the hard, jeweled air. Douse your head between the hidden and the shut doors.
Ode where milk was rare, aphrodisiac even without her hair. Their praise a pink-thighed museum, oh unbearable roses. I sang to thorns in my wrists, throwing obdurate sand over my shoulder, and into the new hollows galloped horses made of sugar. Oh self-discovery, the sand wants it, slithering through bare toes, how Airea everything I touch. With the blue-green seams in my head, oh fumbling. Brocaded benevolence, brides of the sea raised to foam, madness on the rocks. Make me anklets, make me parachute. I'm reading the poem mosquitoes make, slap dead on a Coca-Cola night. Drink with me, shadows on the beach, while from the pan a snake pours white in iron light. Oh noons, I was left alone with a shovel beyond that line of coconut trees.
Redacted from a Know Your Rights training agenda. That a potholed street in the middling borough of Collingswood, New Jersey, bears the name Atlantic after an all-consuming body of water. That all-consuming is Atlas's curse to bear the heavens on his shoulders. That after the fall of the gods, half of the heavens is darkness. That inside the car speeding down the street, I believe I am safe from being halved. That I am not a white box, but a body of water. That white is a pattern of boys who expect to live long enough to become men. That some of these boys are whistling by on their bikes, and behind them, clear as a dream, welcome candles in the windows framed by blooms of vervain. That welcome means I thought I was not afraid of the dark. Since the jade scrubs of the cancer ward, since the fluorescent grid of the factory and the vista of small bones in my father's collar while I was interpreting for the 20-something-year-old white citizen, tell your dad he can quit, or I can fire him. Grief had already burst its cocoon. It ate him like an army of moths from the inside. The brown men and women kept stitching jackets under the heavens of the machines. Welcome. That a moth is trapped in the car with me. It will die, but I do not want to practice fluorescence alone. Like a first language bleeding heart's call, speaking truth to power. I don't know how they don't know that power doesn't care. That watching fires go out will become a pattern. That fire is everywhere, and therefore cheap. That the hole in my foundation is all-consuming, and at its bottom a frangipani tree opens its yellow hands. That police ice is printed in yellow or white on the jacket of the night. That the night walks freely among the ranks of the sun. That a body of water parted once like a red skirt, then sealed over the armored horses of Egypt. That Whitney Houston is a bone blasting out the car windows. That tonight, the night after that, for as long as the distance between God and a pothole, a moth's flight will spell, they are coming for you.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be back here for a second episode from Fire Is Not a Country. This one is called Dentures for Democracy, and it is partially inspired by my father, who was a dentist, and also my friends, who I imagined as the characters for this screenplay, and it's really amazing that they're here to join us today to do this play with me, and I hope you will also play with your friends. I will be doing the narration for this episode.
Everyone, Cynthia, so happy to be here for you. I am Idrissa Simmons Nastali, a poet and a fiction writer, and I will be Woman in Red.
Hey y'all, I'm Perry Janes. I'm a poet and screenwriter. I will be playing the Man in Gray. Real pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for having us. Hi, everyone. My name is Human Wen. I am a poet, and I will be playing Dr. Shuker.
Dentures for Democracy. Exterior Grand Canyon, day. An iPad screen lies face up on the narrow floor between cliffs. It flickers on. A man in a gray suit and a woman in a red blouse appear, sitting at a white desk. Behind them is a stage with two podiums facing each other.
Welcome to tonight's historic presidential candidates debate.
It will be a night like we have never seen before, thanks to Dentists for Democracy.
That's right. Tonight, no politician will be able to tell an unfact on stage.
Well, they won't get away with it, at least.
A desert lizard with a pattern of orange stars along its green spine crawls across the screen, tail sweeping left to right.
We are just minutes away from the start of the debate, but I think we have time to check in with the DFD, don't we?
You bet.
The frame in the screen doubles to show a Southeast Asian man wearing thick glasses, a surgical mask, and a white coat. He's gripping a jar filled with a cloudy solution and appears to be sitting in the front row of the debate theater.
Dr. Shukur is the founder of Dentists for Democracy. Thank you, Doctor, for joining us on this very special night.
It is my pleasure. I believe we have found at least one solution to the crisis of faith and accountability in our democracy, and we are, of course, honored to contribute any way we can.
Can you tell us a little about DFD?
Sure. We were founded after the last election, which, as you are all aware, was plagued by lies and incoherence, a pandemic that became a tragedy of unprecedented scale in this country, and the near destruction of all of our democratic institutions because of the failure of our more clear-headed leaders, despite their best intentions, to hold the extremely powerful accountable.
Why do you think dentists are the right people to help our society course correct, Doctor?
Well, as dentists, our job is to preserve teeth and gum health. This means, at best, preventing the occurrence of rot, and, at worst, keeping it from spreading, including cutting it out as needed.
Excellent, excellent. So is this what you will be doing tonight? Cleaning the rot?
From the mouths that are campaigning to speak for the whole country? Yes, absolutely.
Don't you have a preferred candidate? Won't it be hard to maintain impartiality?
Well, if I may speak candidly, one does not get this close to the zenith of global domination without some predatory instinct. My preference doesn't change that. Whoever it is has to be able to handle either the pain of losing a tooth or telling the truth. The mouth is a bidirectional funnel, you see. Our political leaders have to answer for whatever it is they are asking us, the public, to ingest.
Trumpets swell heroically from behind Dr. Shukur. Cheers erupt like bees from a broken hive. A vulture taps its anxious beak on Dr. Shukur's pixelated cheek.
Oh, it's starting. Okay, we have to wrap up here, Doctor. Can you tell us quickly what's in the jar?
Our team Dentists for Democracy is collaborating with journalists who will fact check statements by the candidates in real time tonight. This jar contains teeth from the final round of the primary debates. Only one party participated then, but thanks to public pressure, both are doing it now.
So when a candidate is caught making a false statement,
one of my colleagues will extract a tooth from their mouth.
Without anesthetics.
They can opt in for anesthesia, but it would probably affect their ability to participate cogently in the debate.
Wouldn't the pain also affect their performance?
Only if they lie. The whole point is deterrence. So, as you can see. But anyway, that's the motto of the American dream, right? No pain, no gain.
The vulture barks. The cliffs exhale, sending waves of glittering dust across the faces of man in gray, woman in red, Dr. Shukur. Within seconds, the screen is buried under a blanket of sand. Only a pulse of underwater light remains. The patter of fading applause.
Sorry, Idrissa voguing all the way to the end is just whew, so good. I had a really hard time editing that one because I was just laughing so hard the whole time. Okay, I'm gonna read this poem, which is probably like the most challenging poem for me to read from the book. And I'm just gonna ask you to stay with me because this is, it is not a poem with normal syntax. I think that's like one of the experiences that, I feel like the sound in my, like one of the challenges when I write is that like how I experience the world is like I have to translate it into English. And I don't mean that I translate it from Indonesian to English. I translate it from like a broken place into something that can be shared and legible. But I wanted to capture some of what that felt like in this poem. Recurring. The ocean is pulling back like a bed cover, but instead of drape, rears up on legs. Foam flower legs banished from the light legs with the deep, wide scars of rock and glue. Crushes bone, covers the sky, the blue-black with the blacker drugged dance of whales crossing out the staring, starred harpoon tips. Mountains, cliffs, drum up stampede, legs bulbous, boiling, the patience-less legs. Water has a velocity angering, God's debasement hovers. Ran after moon, bounces off the smooth lid, father's head like a bottle shiny shined, lying simile because he hated. Is hated, alcohol, breathless rung, mother, sister already out of sight, bright fire, barking eyed, eye full of the forest of dogs have been loosened, lure of the delinking muscles. A blinkered moon into a mouth the size of a basement, a bulb with a waved legs follow. Breath heat in ocean endangered air, airing armed teeth, arms white as the wedding roof looks up brief, flanks of God's beef are cysts of fat, fragility. Will remember the floor ended, isn't ending quickly, then mouth through mouth. The chasm and rope-like tooth edge over it end to end. The crater of father has been stepped, steeping black, polished foot after foot on the fraying phrase woven of arms, knifed out, offering the self's offing, cheap metal while flames finger filigreed. Greedy, the dearness of this loved, with ocean poised, poisons, the missing we had been left, leaving behind this heaving mouth with the leaves made of dogs on the other side. I make am made,
voice veering from the mouth, mutinous tin dying on tongue, volcanic while he halo, goo and grammar, father grass, father vertigo, father long without, doesn't look back at his love, at loving in the ream of mine, flooded by moonlessness to Mobius. He was, isn't, will reach, reasoned by flames licking whose villain language on the rope, that his is going home. It husks me. It does how to resolve. This whole I hold like hellish velocity, stopped as just is when felled.
After the funeral, a train of waxed paper draped over wobbly-footed tables, the red perfectly matching the towering golden Buddha's loincloth. Lips flap, planets wound around chopsticks unravel, drip bits of scallion. Our fists fill with bulbs of cheap porcelain. After love, the patient parse of meat from bone, yolk from destiny. Kin do not recognize each other in this steaming nation. A mint leaf on my tongue makes me forget my tongue. Several languages eddy, their thorns snagging through rain's arrhythmia, misunderstanding our common feast. Auntie who runs circles around the Hells Angels this side of town with her broken English and smudged mascara jumps up after spilling bright orange Fanta on her leather miniskirt. Uncle who can quote any passage from Corinthians on command waves his napkin at her moon thigh. I surrender, I surrender. Roses of Sriracha. The wail of sad laughter rocks us on its salty back. It saves us, this indecency. Beyond the glass storefront, gray sonata of city, the juniper's judgment tearing at elbows. A boy with a dead man's name is stitching himself inside a just married teenage girl. She is laughing too, as though she could still belong to anyone. The sun had rendered every pebble and worm like a confession on the opened ground. It cowers now, while our oil-slick teeth grow winter big. Have they forgotten? Have I? To unbutton the hawk from the white and black keys of the piano. To rewrite everything.
Can y'all give it up for Paul? Okay, I'm gonna read the last poem of the night, and before I do, I just wanted to really give a heartfelt thanks to the AAI team who worked so hard to put this event together. I didn't want to forget anyone. Thank you, Anne, Matt, Sarah, Pan, Yosuke, who's been running the tech this whole time. Thank you. Dave and also Samantha. Y'all are VIPs, rock stars. Thank you so much. And thank you, of course, Kirwyn again, and Airea. Also, Andrea Walls, like, where is she? There you are, for taking photos tonight. Hey! And Sev, thank you for all the things. Art of Revision. Indigo, amaranth, magenta, willow, dusk. You have to choose when to layer, where to darken. You want the angle of the light, the direction of its falling, to be consistent. This is how you give depth to a figure that has only warmth and a finite amount of time. This is how you make them believe you. His hands kneading the dough for the bread maker we will use every week for 1 year exactly. His snoring with the dog-eared recertification exam book yellowing on his lap while the rain picks off needles from the evergreen. The way Rose hasn't left the rims of our eyes since we arrived. He doesn't give up talking to God. At some point, I think he must begin to suspect it's a one-way conversation, though he still insists that a choice not aligned with God's will is a mistake. In other words, a choice is not a choice, or it's something you have to pay for. At least the performance of a conversation is free. God is a poem to recite over and over when what one feels, what one desires, eviscerates in the morning air. He kneels on the freshly vacuumed balding carpet in a freezing room with emerald window panes, holding our hands, saying, Father. The bus she rides to the mountains is cobalt. Then for 12 hours, she horseshoes her spine over a silver desk, one of hundreds of women who have shed their tribes, families, languages, their old weapons, to cross the ocean, to be counted among the fluorescent angels of capitalism. On her way home, an asteroid splashes on the face of the earth. Believe it or not, this happens every day. You have every color before you, and the margins of every page in your school notebook asking for a more radiant life. He won't go to bed until you're done, because you might make a mistake. The coloring pencils, oil-based, the only things in the apartment not purchased from a thrift store or a garage sale, are non-erasable. Of course, he cannot help you. You are not a poet. You are making a wolf. You are making a hatchet. Thank you.
Damn. I want to thank again Cynthia Dewi Oka for this amazing evening. Oh my God. Poet, music producer, filmmaker, screenwriter, designer, hotshot. So thanks again. You asked Era if this is recorded. It is indeed. So please follow us all over the social media channels, YouTube, LinkedIn, Friendster, and you can totally find these. Yes. And keep following everybody here. I think there's enough of us and few enough of us that we can probably just stick around and chat. And if you have any questions about Asian Arts Initiative, you can look for me or Matt or Sarah or Yosuke. I see some alumni here. I'm not going to make them advocate for us, but so hang out. Thank you. Is there anything am I missing anything? Come back tomorrow. Playlist, outro, please.